And so we talked a bit about the role of the private sector. And to get us going on that discussion, we're going to invite to the stage a representative of a tech company that has been outspoken in actually calling for some regulation in at least one area of the use of AI around facial recognition. And hopefully he can talk a little bit about this AI race that we have and perhaps some of the rules that we should have in our AI race and give a European perspective on these matters. So I'd like you to invite to the stage, or I would like to invite to the stage, Microsoft's President for Europe, Middle East and Africa, Michel van der Belle. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Real pleasure to be here today on the Italian Digital Summit. Thank you, Prime Minister Dallas and the organizing committee to having me here to talk about AI. And when I was preparing for this, I was looking for a suitable icebreaker to get us going on AI and how it's implementing or impacting business and society. And of course, if you look at our host country, who is famous for all their progressive digital initiatives, it was actually quite easy to find an icebreaker because in Estonia, they are using AI to plot the best route for icebreakers during the winter. So that was an easy one. And I think that it's also an example that AI is actually becoming part of our life and our daily life. So in my role, I have the pleasure to speak to a lot of leaders of governments, big, small companies, and academia. And they all talk about the transformation of business and empowering citizens around the world. And they also talk about, top of mind is that AI and the transformative power of cloud and AI. And, as we speak, AI is happening. And of course, everything is connected. All the sensors are pushing a lot of data into the cloud on processes, on insights, on external events, and what have you. And of course, today, you have now, the opportunity to improve the business insights and the processes. And our examples today already where, for instance, restaurants are using machine learning and weather data to really determine if they need to stock up more soups or salads. So, and that's more, by the way, than cost saving, pushing something into the cloud. It's also the opportunity to be innovative and competitive for every company that's out there. We did our own research about high-growth companies. Those are companies with double-digit growth. And they're twice more likely to really use AI in their environment. And those high-growth companies are also way more likely to implement it in the coming 12 months and take the benefits of AI, what's out there. So you can say that technology is separating the best from the rest if you think about the opportunity that's out there. And with that, every company becomes a technology company. And they're looking for partnerships with companies like ourselves to really build that digital technology that they need. And with that, every company becomes a software company. And they build their own technology and their own software capabilities. And just to illustrate this, these are two very important statistics. So on the left side, you see that software engineering is growing 11% faster in non-tech than in tech. And the other one is an interesting one, especially in the automotive industry, which is very important for Europe. You see that the auto industry is hiring software engineers 3 times faster than mechanical engineers. So really, these customers want the tech companies to be just more than a platform providers. They want us to have that partnership to build capabilities, to build the governance model around this, and actually define the right culture to make this happen. So if you talk about building their own capabilities, this is really about strengthening the competitiveness of what's out there. And more competitive in Europe means that they will contribute to local economies and eventually to the EU community and economy as well. And of course, they're taking advantage of cloud computing as a foundation of technology. And on top of that, they start to innovate in partnerships to really hit the high level of innovation that you need. And an example is, for instance, the work we're doing with Volkswagen Group in Germany on their automotive cloud, where they're really looking at, let's say, accelerating and optimizing the connection between the vehicles, the cloud, and the customers, as this becomes critical if you think about autonomous driving or mobility for the future. Another example is the work we're doing with Airbus. They're using some AI services, but they're also using a mixed reality, let's say, headset called the HoloLens. And with that, they are looking to accelerate the production and the design of their aircrafts. So already, AI is actually improving processes. It's simplifying workflows, and it's actually driving better outcomes. Another example is that you see a lot of entrants in the insurance markets, where these entrants are using machine learning, natural language processing, and chatbots to come up with very quick quotes and payouts in minutes. And that means that they are not only being very efficient, but they're also, let's say, proving that there are new business models that are evolving by applying this. So it makes small businesses actually more competitive and large companies more efficient. And of course, there is a huge economic potential. This is a study that suggests, a huge number, 2.7 trillion, which is 20% of the European economic output by 2030. But it gives you a perspective that AI can fuel that kind of big part of the economy from a future point of view. So there will be inevitable changes in the industry if you look at this. Now, let me give you some examples about some industries that are really transforming with AI. And this is an example of a German company called ThyssenKrupp, and this is their material service department. And they're using an AI solution called Alfred. And it's optimizing pricing, processes, and storage space. And if you think about this, they have a storage space that is 3.5 million square meters. And if you lay that out, it's like the size of the city of London. So if you think about that complexity, where they have 2 million, let's say, annual orders, 250,000 customers, and 150,000 products and services, to really make sense of that complexity, AI is reasoning over this data and is really providing the outcome that they need to optimize the pricing, the process, and the storage space they have. Healthcare, great example. So Eurostat is saying that, roughly 1/5 of the EU citizens is actually older than 65 years. So that means that the older population means there will be, a different care that will be needed. But AI can, of course, help the old one, but also help the new one. And this example of Great Ormond Street Hospital is about improving the physiotherapy care of children with cystic fibrosis. And what it does, it's measuring the breaths of children by a game that they really like to play. And by doing so, collecting a lot of data that turns into a very specific subscription or a very specific prescription for that child. This was, by the way, done in collaboration with Microsoft Research in Cambridge in the UK. But it's an example where AI is actually adding value in the healthcare space. Public sector example, another great one. So this is about making society safer. This is about the Ministry of Justice in the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. And this is about prosecutors using AI to detect imagery of child exploitation. And they are using AI in seized computers of suspects to detect those images much faster in a very profound way. And not only faster, but also it decreases the psychological pressure of the people that normally have to look at all those images whole day. So I think it's faster, but also really having people empowered not to look at these things, because AI will take care of that. So it's a great example how it's being used in a public sector environment. So, AI is not for the large companies. It's not like the Oracle of Delphi that renders predictions for the fluent. So it's actually it's leveling a playing field for all companies, because today, small companies have access to the same technology that large companies have through cloud computing. In the past, that was very different. And this is a great example. This is about a Swedish company called McMurra. They are a whiskey distillery, a single malt whiskey, 40 people. And they're using AI to analyze market data and customer data to optimize for what kind of whiskey they should bring to the market. I had the pleasure to talk to they call it the chief nose officer and master blender. And she will tell you that AI makes their life just much better because she can focus really on the aroma. And of course, AI is crunching the data. So it's an example where, aroma meets the algorithm and of course tries to optimize for that. It's also done in partnership with a Finnish company called Fourkind, also a medium-sized company. So it's an example where small and medium businesses really can take advantage of it. And if you then look at the Gartner annual survey they did on small and medium-sized companies, they are indicating that 55% of small and medium companies are actually already implementing or start implementing AI in the coming 12 months, which is a very, very encouraging number if you think about the opportunity you have. And we as a company, we're partnering with thousands of tech companies in Europe to be sure that we are building that digital skills, the digital technology that those customers need to ensure that they can take benefit of that. But we also look at solutions that actually require less technical skills or having experts. So this is what we call low-code or no-code solutions, meaning that you don't have experts to do deep coding, but it's an approach where you take Lego blocks and you just put them together and you build an AI solution, and that's something that starts to evolve as well. And if you then look at, for instance, the national plans of an AI for France, Germany, Finland, UK, or other countries, I think EU can really lead in many of these important industries like mobility, manufacturing, and healthcare. But of course, we need to be sure that we adapt it quickly and provide an environment where business really can take advantage of this moving forward. So potential means big opportunity. But it even means that there is a bigger responsibility. So algorithms are a set of rules that are generating predictions and probabilistic outcomes. But you want to be sure that those rules are actually part of your ethical, let's say, rules you have, and also that you want to be sure that it's aligned with the society that you want to live in. So this is not about the intentions of AI, but it's also about the outcome of AI and how it has an impact on people. And I think it's about human accountability that really counts if you think about how we want to evolve with AI. It needs to remain human accountability. And data is the fuel for AI today, and it becomes actually an increasing asset for many, many companies that AI and data are clearly of importance. And the customers really wanted to know that who owns the data and how it's being protected. But at the same time, data needs to be shared. Again, coming back to healthcare, if you share patient data, you can save lives, you can come up with better cures and what have you. If it's exposed in the wrong way, you can be excluded of insurance or even longer-term impacts. So you need to be sure that there is something of a guardrail to protect this. And I think there are three things to call out. Is that, first of all, the use of open standards is very critical. So like fire in healthcare is something that is of importance. We call it differentiated privacy as one of the ways to look at this. And we have today the opportunity to do secure machine learning with various data sources. So that means that nobody has access to what's happening if machine learning is cracking the codes. So I think that technology needs to progress in an ethical and human-centric way, and not only when it's developed, but again, also when it's implemented. And at the end of the day, you need to be sure that it's built into the platform from the start, so we can have the opportunity to move from principles to practice in reality. So with that, Microsoft decided to define 6 principles of ethical AI to help that we remain human accountable for this. First of all, fairness. And fairness is about fair, balanced way and not affect people or specific groups that are, of course, not part of this. Reliability, that means that, of course, it needs to be reliable, it has to be up and running in normal circumstances, but also in non-normal circumstances. Privacy and safety. Of course, people only share their data if there is trust, and they need to be sure that their privacy is protected and the data is secured. And of course, the role about cybersecurity becomes very critical. So in my mind, there is no, let's say, privacy without a very strong cybersecurity in place. The other one is inclusiveness. of course, everyone needs to be benefit of this, and everyone needs to be empowered to take advantage of AI. So inclusiveness is super critical in this part. Transparency. If we talk about how AI is making impact to people's life, then people should know what's behind it and understand how decisions were made, actually in that, not in a black box, but in a very transparent way. And the last thing is that, coming back to that accountability. It's really be accountable on the design, the deployment, and how you run an AI system. And that still needs to be a human accountability more than anything else. And we are, of course, in, let's say, collaboration with many organizations, but the European high-level expert group developed some AI principles as well, based on European values and fundamental rights. And I think we're very supportive of that. And of course, there are the EU's principles of ethical principles of trustworthy AI. And I think that all these things will lead that, in the panel it was said as well, there will be experimentation, things will go wrong. So we need to have a guardrail, we need to have a framework that actually protecting all the kind of weird things that potentially can happen. But at the same time, of course, also have the opportunity for businesses and governments to innovate with AI and really turning into principles into practice. And as mentioned, facial recognition, which has great opportunities, but also has the potential to impact fundamental rights of people. And we have publicly asked to regulate this from a government perspective, because that's how we feel about this in this particular case. And again, people only accept technology that it can trust, and they can work with technology that they really feel is trust and safe. So again, we need to organize ourselves in a way that the human accountability is actually captured. And with that, we need to, the tech leading companies need to work with governments to be sure that there is that kind of framework that everybody adheres to and supports. And at the same time, for an EU success, we need to be sure that we need to have the capabilities that we need. Governance models should be in place. And of course, the culture that organizations require to transform are super critical in how we want to make this and move it forward. So, in summary, I would say 4 points. And it sounds obvious, but at the same time, I think it's important. The ones that move the fastest will fare the best. So really, we need to go, we need to, of course, be thoughtful, but at the same time, let's do it, let's move forward. And I think that the examples that I've given you, many companies actually are applying AI as we speak. So they have taken the risk, and of course, they are, actually doing quite well in implementing it. At the same time, of course, the economic growth will come for the ones that will embrace it. And AI can solve social problems, but we need to really have a critical eye on the future, meaning that we have, strong ethical principles, a shared responsibility. And it's really about, also the evolving laws, or you think about the labor market reforms or the skills development that need to happen in line with what AI will bring to society. And like I said before, AI isn't created by technology companies alone. These companies out there in all industries and all sectors are embracing it. They are becoming software companies themselves. That means that everyone will start to apply AI in a meaningful way and drive innovation. And one thing to call out is that as computers start to look like humans in their behavior, we also need to look from a not only from a science or a math perspective, we also need to think about social sciences and humanities to really become important for that. So with that, thank you, Tallinn, and thank you for having me today.